only a couple of Sundays before everybody knew your name.
Yeah, I waited till see that chant? Remember last year? Welcome everyone to our Lenten program, which this year is called A Priest and a Rabbi Walk into a Bar, Humor as Faith. As you can see, no rabbis. So today it's a priest walks into a bar and no one will talk to him. She, however, will be with us the next 3 weeks, and I look forward to, I know what she's up to and it's fun, and I hope that you'll come back and experience that. We did this program at the Lyceum, which is the educational outreach program for older adults through Binghamton University. We had the freedom of doing 2 hours per session. We did 3 2-hour sessions. That's too long for our purposes. So we're cutting it up, and I'm going to do a little bit of my stuff today, and then she'll have 3 weeks to do some of her stuff, and then I'll finish the last week with some more of my stuff. But I wanted to start today talking about why is it that I think humor is important? Why is it important in my life? And I suppose the first thing I discovered about humor was how important it was to me as a survival technique. I was about this tall until I was a senior in high school. When you were a boy and you are that tall, that's hard. People make fun of you. I still remember, I think I was a freshman in high school, and some big guy walked up to me in the high school hallway and said, "Why don't you go back to kindergarten where you belong?" Because I was so tiny. What I learned early on was if I'm funny about myself, that beats them to it. And it's a strategy that prevents sometimes getting beat up, or at least if I turn the humor on myself before anybody else does, it's a way of coping with things. And I suppose that has translated over the years into using humor as a way of dealing with things that are difficult in our lives. I'm going to do that week 5 on Palm Sunday, which seems kind of fitting. That's the day I'm going to talk about using humor to cope with pain in our lives. But I grew up in a family that we just liked to laugh. We always teased each other. We liked to laugh. We liked to tell jokes. I didn't realize how important that was to me in my mode of being until, remember when you're a senior in high school and you go around and get the other kids to sign your yearbook and you sign theirs? I was shocked to find that everybody who signed my yearbook said, "Thanks for making me laugh in math class. Thanks for making me laugh in science class. Thanks for making me laugh in..." I didn't know I was doing that. I was as surprised as the next person to find out that I was a class clown. I did learn, though, that if you use humor in appropriate ways, it's a good thing. And I think the first principle I learned was it's better to make fun of myself than to make fun of other people. Rabbi Siona was asked at her congregation when we did this program, when is it appropriate to tell ethnic jokes? And she said, well, basically it isn't unless you are that ethnicity. You can tell jokes on yourself, but it's hurtful for you to tell jokes about other people. And I think I learned that early on. When you grow up this tall, it's really hard to take yourself terribly seriously. I do remember the day, it was 10th grade. You know how they used to pull you out and give you a nurse's physical. They'd weigh you, check your height, and I don't know, heartbeat, something. That was the day I hit 5 feet tall. And I went back into English class and said, "Hey, everybody, I'm 5 feet tall now." The whole class clapped. Except for the teacher who said, "We don't care, Mark, sit down." I don't know. But I do think this translates into us as people of faith. As I said in my sermon today, maybe the best religious use of humor is to keep us down to earth. I mean, the word humility is related to the word humus, which means earth. So if you are down to earth, you're close to the earth, you are humble. And that's an important virtue for us because, you know, we are trying to talk about the ultimate source of all things. We are trying to be in relationship with the Creator, try to share the good news of the Creator. Unfortunately, down through history, that can lead to arrogance and thinking that we have the only truth and nobody else has any truth. If you can laugh at yourself once in a while, that's sort of antidote to that kind of attitude. And we're a little bit less judgmental. As I read through the Gospels, I think Jesus had kind of a wicked sense of humor, but it doesn't translate. Humor doesn't usually translate well across cultures and across languages. We only really get little hints of it. His 2 main modes of teaching were aphorisms or one-liners, like the last will be first, the first will be last. That's a one-liner or an aphorism. And the other way he taught was through stories, parables. And some of them, I think, if we were there at the time, would have been funny. I'm not saying he was a stand-up comic, but I think there was an aspect of humor to his teaching. For example, I've got to believe that when he had that line, we're so familiar with it, we'd never crack a smile, but he said, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. I have a feeling that his original audience would have been tickled by that image of trying to get a camel through a needle's eye. And the killjoys I talked about in my sermon have missed that point. Down through the centuries, the interpreters of this text have tried to find a way to make that line make sense. And they actually said, well, there's a gate in the city of Jerusalem called the temple, the camel gate. And if a camel can't go through that gate, if it's fully loaded, you got to take all the packages off the camel and squeeze that camel through, and then it'll make it through. And the image they're trying to use is, well, of course, you have to get rid of everything except yourself to make it into the kingdom. Trouble is, guess what? Archaeologically, there's no camel gate in Jerusalem. This is just, they missed the joke. And they missed, Jesus is exaggerating. Jewish humor is ironic and given to exaggeration. I mean, I think that's part of what is behind one of his troubling sayings that's bothered me and some of you when he said, unless you hate your father and mother and sister and brother, you can't be my disciple. I'm not exactly sure how to understand that saying, but I do know that he's using what is called hyperbole or exaggeration to make a point. We need to be so committed to the ways of God that the other priorities in our life take a distant second place. But I'm not done with that one. I'm still wrestling with that. But I have a feeling he was using some ironic exaggeration. Or how about the funny mental picture he does in the Sermon on the Mount when he says, don't judge others so that you won't be judged. Why do you look at the speck in your neighbor's eye when you have a log in your own eye? How dare you say to your neighbor, please, let me take that speck out of your eye, when there's a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, then you'll be able to see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. The ridiculousness of that image, I suspect, was part of the charm of his teaching. And I would imagine that people laugh at that sort of thing. There are two gospel texts that I have read or recited in church that have gotten laughs. And both of them happened relatively recently. The first one, people have laughed at this a number of times, the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. When the Pharisee's standing in the temple praying like this, I thank you, God, that I am not greedy or dishonest or an adulterer like everybody else. I thank you that I'm not like that tax collector over there. This year I recited that on Ash Wednesday, just like that, and you chuckle. I mean, it's a funny picture. And Jesus is purposely setting up a pompous Pharisee, and they weren't all pompous. The Pharisees get a bum rap in the Gospels, but he's setting up this pompous Pharisee as a figure of ridiculousness so that we'll see the point about staying humble and staying down to earth. The other one never happened before this year. You surprised me this year. I was reciting when Jesus changed the water into wine. And I said, the master of the feast gets the bridegroom aside and says, this is in the Bible. Everyone serves the choice wine first, and later, after the guests have all had too much to drink, he brings out the cheap wine. The congregation laughed this year. That's never happened before. And I got a big charge out of that. The thing is, we see a Bible, and it's got black leather covers. It's in 2 columns, really fine print, lots of these and thous and italics and all this kind of stuff. And we think you can't read it in any other way but absolute serious, solemn, reverent ways. There's a lot of funny stuff in the Bible. And Siona's going to talk about some of those things too. Carl is here, so I wasn't going to tell this story, but I want to tell this now. Carl and I had a little something going, and Percival reminded me.
Why do you want to rephrase that? That made so much sense in your head, didn't it?
You rework that. Okay. It's going to get worse, Carl. No. I had a dream. And in this dream, it was time for church. I have these anxiety dreams a lot about church. The church was packed. I mean, it's always packed in my dreams. And it's time to start the service, and we're running late, and I can't find things. Usually it's my sermon or vestments or acolytes. This time in my dream, I was going to use Percival the Talking Ape, and I couldn't find him. Finally, I found him in my office, and he was only about this big. And my mother was in this dream, and I said, "Mom, did you wash Percival? You shrunk my ape!" In my dream, my mother said, "No, I didn't do that. Carl Wright did that." So the next day I see Carl in the real world, in church, and I tell him the story and we decided that shrinking your ape must be some sort of euphemism for really messing up and looking like an idiot. So then we have the harvest dinner that Carl and Laura put on. And I was so proud. I was going to carve, it was turkeys, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to carve, I brought my electric carving knife from home. And I am, believe it or not, good at carving turkeys. I'd been trained back when we were first married by a friend of ours who was good at it. So I was really looking forward to showing off my skills. I bring out my electric carving knife, and I got the two knives over here that fit together, and I'm trying to plug them into the unit, and it just wasn't going. And Carl says, "I think you have those upside down." I said, "Carl, you just shrunk my ape." If that kind of thing happens to you a lot in your life, it's really hard to get all puffed up and think you're really important. So it started early on with me. In seminary, I had, for some reason, I don't know why, my 3 closest male buddies were at least 6 feet tall, a couple of them 6'2", 6'3", and so you can imagine what the things they said. We were moving apartments in Evanston one time. We were moving on to the campus. Now, you need to know about seminaries. The Episcopal Church has lots of names for things. And an Episcopal seminary does too. We didn't have a lawn. We had a garth. We didn't have a hallway. We had a cloister. In seminary, we didn't have a cafeteria. We had a refectory. And in seminary, we didn't have married student housing. We had slums. So my friends were helping us move all our stuff. And every time they found something that belonged to the children, Luke was, I don't know, 5'4", Marie was 2, they'd find their toys. There was a lawnmower, a little plastic lawnmower. And my buddy said, "Look, a Giroux-sized lawnmower." And then they found a little desk that was the kids. "Look, a Giroux-sized prayer desk." Unfortunately, then they found an ironing board my wife had in college. You could put it on a desk. So it was this tall. They said, "Look, a Giroux-sized ironing board." So, this is the kind of friends I had in seminary. Then the day came for us to be ordained. Some of you have heard this story. And we were ordained deacons first. This was the Diocese of Chicago. There were 17 of us being ordained together. It was a big class. And we had to kneel on stone in the Cathedral of St. James in Chicago. I had bruises on my knees and shins for weeks after this ordination because there were so many of us, we had to kneel for so long. So the way it works is one by one, the bishop does all these prayers, and then one by one you go and you kneel before the bishop, this time on a cushion. He puts his hands, and it was a he puts his hands on your head and prays for you, and then hands you a Bible as a sign of your authority to preach. One by one, he did that with everybody. He came to me. I go through the thing, and he prays for me, hands me the Bible. I start to get up. His canon, his assistant, pushes me back down. I said, "This is unusual." So I start to get up again. The canon pushes me back down again. Now I'm starting to sweat because my thought is, "Oh no, they found out about me. It's off." The bishop smiles and hands me a miniature copy of the New Testament. And all my friends in the circle facing away from the congregation are going like this. The people behind them, their presenters, think they're weeping with the emotion and pat them on the shoulder. Afterwards, they told me, "You needed a Giroux-sized Bible." Some of you have been impressed by my ability to memorize chunks of Scripture. It's one of my spiritual disciplines. I do know chunks of, especially the Gospel of Mark, but all the Gospels by heart. And some of you have been struck by that and said, "Wow, that's a real gift." And I guess it is, but I don't want you to be too impressed. The same bishop that gave me the Giroux-sized Bible at the diocesan convention in Chicago told a joke at the convention banquet. I love this joke. It's a joke about an absent-minded professor. This family of the absent-minded professor is moving. They've bought a new house, They're in the college town. They're moving across town. And so this guy who taught, ancient Greek history or something is off to work on moving day, and his wife knows him. So she gets him inside. She says, honey, remember, today is moving day. While you're at work, the movers are coming, and they're moving all our stuff to the new house. When you come home today, remember to go to the new house. I am pinning the address and the phone number of our new house to your jacket. Remember, at the end of work today, go to the house. So he goes off and he's teaching the Punic Wars or whatever it is he's teaching, gets lost in the world of the first century. And sure enough, at the end of the day, he's forgotten about the move. Goes to the old house and starts through the door, and it's locked. And he doesn't understand that, but he pulls out his key and tries it in the door. The locks have been changed. He can't figure this out. And then he remembers. A dim thing happened in his brain. Oh, yes, we're moving today. And so then he realized he needs to go to the new house. And he's lost the piece of paper with the new address. Can't find it anywhere. He's really desperate now because he can't remember the address, can't remember the phone number. In desperation, he looks up and down the street and sees a little boy riding a bicycle in the neighborhood and says, little boy, my family moved away from this house to another house across town. Do you by any chance know where the family that used to live here went to move? The little boy shakes his head in disgust and says, Dad, Mom knew you were I love that story. I come from a family like that. That's my father once called my mother Arnold. Because the other music teacher at school was Arnold, and he was in another place. He called her Arnold. So, the Bishop of Montgomery is a wonderful storyteller, tells this joke. So this is before email, people. This is a long time ago. We're living in Chicago. My family's in upstate New York. So I wrote, Dear Mom and Dad, the weekly letter. Heard the funniest joke at diocesan convention. I write this whole joke out and mail it off to them. A couple weeks later, I was writing home, and I said, Dear Mom and Dad, I heard this wonderful joke recently, and I thought you ought to hear it. I wrote the same exact joke, sent it off to them. They still talk about it. A little ironic there, huh? So, don't be too impressed with my memory. Another little event happened at about the same time. Our son Luke was born in the year 1980. We lived in Chicago at the time. I was in seminary. And we didn't have any money. My parents sent us money, bought us a ticket on United Airlines so that the three of us could fly from Chicago to Rochester and they could meet their first grandchild. So we do that. Now on United Airlines at the time, they had this flight attendant on our flight who was wonderful. He saw we had an infant. He was so helpful, a really gracious man. His name was Myron. And I just thought, what a nice thing. I wish there were more people like that. So that happens. A year later, I'm working for this, while I'm in seminary, I had a job in a financial planning office. Great guy. The boss was my friend as well as my boss. He and his family were going on vacation. And he asked if I would drive them to the airport, O'Hare Airport, busiest in the world at the time. And if I dropped them off, then we could use their car as a second car for us for the week while they were gone, and then I was to pick them up when they came back. So the week goes by, and at the end of their flight came in at 10 o'clock one night, and so I was there. And couldn't go out to the gate, of course. Clumps of people would come out when a flight arrived, and usually led by the flight crew. About the time his flight was due, and I knew they were flying United, here comes the flight crew, the captain with the hat, steward, and a male flight attendant. It's the guy. It's the guy that was so good with our kid. It's Myron. So when my boss arrives, I said, did you have a flight attendant on this flight that was extremely helpful with your toddler and your baby girl? Yeah. How'd you know that? I said, was his name Myron? Yeah. How'd you know that? I said, well, a year ago, we flew United Airlines. We had a flight attendant. His name was Myron. He was wonderful with Luke. Wow. You remember? What a memory. This is great. We go out in the parking garage. It took me 20 minutes to find where I parked their car. You get off and then your 8 gets shot. It's amazing. Stuff happens in church. I mean, you've all been witnesses to the bat. You've all been witnesses to into the Advent. The first church I worked for, it was in St. Louis, 1986. And at that time, Luke was 6 years old. Luke had a toy. And it was this. This is a big rubber fly. And Paula, he used to leave it around. He's a little kid. Paula would find it, and she'd kind of startle. Well, I thought this was great. So I started hiding this on her. I hid it in the sugar canister with just the legs sticking out. That made her jump. It has a suction cup on the bottom, so I stuck it to the sliding doors of the patio one time. A real good one was when we had a washing machine in the basement, and I went down in the basement and stuck it to the bottom in the dark basement. She opens up the washing machine, and there it is. Well, then she started retaliating. You know, I found it one time in the flap of the car when I went to fill with gas, and there's the fly. The best was one morning I stagger up early in the morning, go into the bathroom, lift up the toilet seat, and there it is. Right on the toilet seat. That was a good one. Well, then one Sunday I was the assistant priest, but I was the celebrant that day. My boss, the rector, was preaching, so I was the celebrant. So the offering is taken up, and here come the ushers with the offering plates, and right on the top of the offering plate is this extremely ugly fly. I'm supposed to, startle or something, but I'm a professional. I just blessed it right along with everything. It goes over on the shelf just like the collection always did. After church, my wife is down front. In that church, the organ was down front. She's down front talking to the organist. The treasurer comes out, gets the offering plate. Female treasurer, she looks at whose is this? Paula says, oh, that's mine. Thank you very much. So now she's got the usher in on this, right? The time came for me to leave that church. It was October of '87. We're moving from St. Louis back to Chicago, where I'm becoming the associate rector of a big church in suburban Chicago, Wheaton, Illinois. The day we left town, we decided we got to get this guy who got in with it as the usher with Paula. So we go over to his house, and we propped it above a door so that when he came home from work that day, he'd open the door and this fly would drop right on it. Now that we didn't hear how it went. So I go to this new church having a great time. I love the man I'm working for. He's a great priest. I've learned a lot from him. If I can be like anybody, I want to be like him. Well, my friend the usher back in St. Louis blew it because he wrote me a letter. My new boss's name was Bob. The priest's name was Bob. He said, I bet by now Bob has given you that gift that I sent him to give to you. Well, no, Bob hasn't. But now I know Bob has the fly. So I'm just waiting. And the annual meeting of the parish comes. And as at our annual meeting, sometimes presentations are made. So my boss says, I have a gift for our beloved associate priest, Father Mark, hands me this nice package. And I said, I know what this is. Just like in my sermon this morning. I know what this is. Father Mark always knows. I open it up. It's not the fly. It's a plaster cast of the praying hands that has been, the fingernails are painted bright red. There are warts on it with hairs coming out of the warts. Very nice. I treasured it, but that wasn't the fly. I just kept waiting and waiting for the fly to arrive, and it never did. So then in March, in this event, the priest could actually cook, and he had an annual luncheon for the women of the church that he prepared. It was the rector's soup luncheon. He hands me a bowl of soup. Just, this is for you. And I'm working the room, Yeah. He said, no, Mark, sit down and eat your soup. So I sit down. A wing floats to the top of my soup, and he put the fly in my soup. So now I've got this back. And that summer, he went on vacation to his summer place in North Carolina. And he lived in the rectory, which was right across the street from the church. So the parish secretary got the mail every day and took it in their house. The last day, when they were due home, I said, Mary, her name was Mary too, I said, I'm going to take the mail in today. So I take the mail into their home with the key. I go upstairs, and I take this fly, and I put it under the pillow of my boss in his bedroom and go home and wait. About 9:30 or 10 o'clock that night, the phone rings. I pick it up. Without introduction, his wife says, you're bad, you're really bad. I guessed wrong. I put it under her. So, in the Episcopal Church, a sacrament is an outward visible sign of an inward spiritual grace. Now, this stupid piece of black plastic and whatever it is has become a sacrament. This is an outward sign of friendship and laughter by what it's gone through all the years. Now, if God can bring that much joy and friendship out of a stupid piece of plastic, imagine what God can do with the bread and the wine of the Eucharist, the water of baptism, the oil of healing. I always think of this fly, believe it or not, when I think about sacramental theology, because this stupid thing taught me about outward visible signs of inward spiritual graces. So, Then I was serving a little church in Pennsylvania. A few of you in this room have been there. One Sunday, we didn't have, it was a much smaller church than St. Mark's, but we had some teenagers and we had a good time. And in that church, the custom was for the priest to wear what's called a chasuble. I don't wear it every Sunday. I don't wear them very often. They're kind of warm. It's like a poncho affair. You've seen me wear them before. But in that church, the chasuble was over the altar rail until halfway through the service. At the passing of the peace, the priest would preach just in an alb and a stole like I wore this morning, and then halfway through the service, put on the chasuble, the poncho-like garment, and on we go with the Eucharist. Well, the teenagers decided to get me, so they pinned this spider to that chasuble on the altar rail. This is a fairly realistic-looking spider, but it's on a little pin, like an earring or something. I don't know. But they had this pin, so I put it on, and I've got a spider right here. Their hope was that I would see this during church and go, "Wah!" They didn't know I really like spiders. Spiders don't The thing they really didn't know is I'm really not a terribly observant fellow. I wasn't aware that it was there. One of the mothers of the teens knew it was there, and she was horrified because she thought some elderly person would be at the altar rail as I lean in to give them communion and would scream and faint or something like that. So she waved at her daughter. Her daughter actually had to come up during the prayers and say, "You got this?" So, "Oh, that's very nice." So I've kept this. This is Mary Taylor hates this thing. She is scared of spiders. This really bothers her. So if I want to tick her off, I put this in various places for Mary Taylor. It's just a little thing. You don't like it being in I don't even know what it's wires. It's anyway. I like spiders. They're kind of cool. All right. This same church in Pennsylvania was a church I went to in 1990. At that time, I was 35 years old. First time I was a rector. You won't believe this looking at me now because you people have aged me. I look like a kid, a real child. We recently found some pictures of what Paula and I looked like when we moved into Lolita Street in December of 1994. Mary Taylor found the picture and she said, "You guys look like babies." Pretty young. And in my line of work, it helps if you kind of look venerable. And I don't. Or it didn't then. I'm getting there now. So I grew the beard to try to look older. Because I was tired of hearing, not people from my church, but people in this small town I would overhear in the post office or the grocery store saying, "Hey, who's that kid who's the pastor of St. Luke's Church?" So I grew the beard trying to look older. And I found out something. I found out that you all own the appearance of your cleric. I have a feeling for women clergy, their hairstyle is a matter of comment. For males, if you grow a beard or a mustache, people have feelings about this. And in Pennsylvania, they told me their feelings. It was 2/3 against, and 1/3 liked it. The only vote that counted was my wife's vote, and she liked it, so I kept it. In fact, she still likes it. Every once in a while, now that I'm old, I shaved it off to try to look young again, and she said, "Grow it back." I said, "How come?" She said, "You have jowls now." So that kind of cut me deeply. But I grew it back. And then, of course, my friend Evan, I don't know why I asked him this when he was probably 5 at the time or 11. I don't know why. I was convincing with Evan Jacobs, and I said, "Hey, Evan, what color's my beard?" "White!" I said, "No, really, white!" He stuck to the white thing. And this was before it was this white. So, there's just no getting away with it. Anyway, the climax came in Pennsylvania with this really sweet man. His name was Carl. One Sunday came up to me when I had the full goatee, and he looked at me for a minute, and he said, "Bye." So I decided it was time to retaliate. That is when I wrote the song I would like to sing to you now. This is the Bearded Boy Blues, and this is a song for every male who has ever grown facial hair, attempted, and been mocked for it. I used to have a baby face, so I started to grow a beard. I wanted to look full of wisdom and grace, but I just ended up looking weird. I got them fungus face, razor-free, facial hair, cheap goatee, whisker growth, mustache in, uglified, hairy chin. paying my manhood dues. I got them bearded boy blues. I asked my friends, both of them, I asked my friends before I began, would they like a full beard on me? And they told me to grow one just as long as I can, 'cause more hair means less face to see. I got them fungus face, razor-free, facial hair, cheap goatee, whisker growth, mustache, chin, uglified, hairy chin, paying my manhood dues. I got them bearded boy blues. I brought my wife a bribe of roses, and I said, honey, will this beard bring good luck? I said, I want to imitate Abraham Lincoln or Moses. She said, nah, you just look like a woodchuck. I got them fungus face, razor-free, facial hair, cheek, goatee, whisker growth, mustache, skin, uglified, hairy chin, paying my manhood dues. I got them bearded boy blues. All right, it's not great, I know. It's weeny, it's wispy, and it gets in my way eating lunch. But every once in a while I find stuck in it something kind of crispy. A surprise midnight snack I can munch. I got them fungus face, razor-free, facial hair, cheek, goatee, whisker growth, mustache, skin, uglified, hairy chin, paying my manhood dues. I got them bearded boy blues. I got them bearded boy blues. I know it's funny looking, but it tickles my wine. Got them bearded boy blues. I got them bearded boy blues. Oh yeah. Thank you. I know you've heard it before, but I just have to continue to respond to the grace of my facial hair. I have another song that you know that I've sung for you before, but today I'm going to reveal part of the origin of this song. You've seen the things I've done. You've seen me walk into Advent wreaths. Some of you are aware I almost burned this church building down with the paperweight on my desk. You've seen me cope with bats and various things. I do not pretend to be coordinated. I am a klutz, I admit it. And I have a song I wrote called Clerical Klutz, and some of this stuff actually is about me. Not all of it, but I'm going to leave you to figure out which is. But today I'm going to sing it for you, and then I'm going to show you the origin of some of it. When I was a young guy, just starting as a priest, I was gonna change the world, or change the church at least. But now I've gotten older, and it's time to fess right up. I'm now a lot less bolder, I just want not to mess up. One Sunday at the Eucharist, it all was going fine, till I spread my hands to pray, and spilled a cup of wine. Shorted out the microphone, wasn't nothing I could do. It spread across the linen and down the altar too. That's true, but not me. That was a friend of mine. I stumble and I drop stuff, and I've spoken lots of gaps. At least the members of my church still think I'm good for laughs. But dignity is sometimes just too hard for me to say. Like when at that cemetery I fell into that grave. And that was me. Oh, they'll never hang your portrait, but the vestry might hang you. If at Easter Vigil baptisms you drop a kid or two. That wasn't me. Little clumsy is okay, but too much makes them gag. Like my visit to the hospital when I sat on the catheter bag. Ma'am, I think your insurance company will cover that. How about if I go to the nurse's station and get a towel and clean that up? No? Okay. How about a prayer? You want me to leave? Can I at least give you my blessing? Okay, I'm going. Hope to see you soon. Sunday, maybe? Gee, all that fuss over a little bit of backwash. Oh, they'll never hang your portrait, but the vestry might hang you. If at Easter vigil baptism you drop a kid or two, little clumsy is okay. Too much makes them gag. Like my visit to the hospital when I sat on the catheter bag. And now, to show you that I'm not the only twisted one, I have something to take home with you today. I have a cartoon. Would you take one and pass them around? When you get this, just take a look at it. I'm especially fond of the expression on the face of the patient in the bed. I'm not going to talk about till it's not fair to talk about till everybody has it. That's gross. Maybe you could add that line. That's disgusting. I like that. This is a cartoon that appeared on the bulletin board of my seminary in 1985. This was done by one of my seminary classmates. He had been a graphic artist before going to seminary, and he developed the custom of drawing a cartoon every day and putting it up on the bulletin board, and they were really good. I photocopied every one of them that made it there, and I kept them all these years. See that cartoon right there? That's what inspired the line about sitting on the catheter bag. The expression on that guy's face is what I think of every time I sing this song. I don't know why. It's twisted, I know, but I like that. I just like that. And just for your CPE, by the way, it says a CPE journal. That stands for a CPE casebook. That stands for Clinical Pastoral Education. In seminary, we all have to spend a summer in a hospital or nursing home being trained, and that's what he was. That was the summer he was doing CPE. Now, I got to tell you about this. The guy that did this cartoon is a guy named Andy Dici. After seminary, he worked in New England. And then he went to work for the man who had been a seminary dean, and we all knew him, who had become the Bishop of New York, Mark Giroux. He was the canon to the ordinary for pastoral care. A couple of months ago, Andy got elected Bishop of New York. This man is a bishop now. A bishop! That scares me and gives me hope at the same time. We've had him in our house. I've sent him the CD. I let him know that his cartoon is still with me and inspired this song. So I just want you to know that I'm not the only one. There's a bishop out there who's probably weirder than I am. Speaking of Episcopal things in the church ranks, I think this is the best satire I've ever written on clergy, because I just got a thing about how, as I said in my sermon, about how puffed up we can get in this line of work. You know, we wear the fancy robes, we get the titles, we sometimes forget we're not God. We're just workers for hire taking care of some jobs in a congregation that a lot of people have responsibility for. But a lot of priests have ticked me off over the years by getting all puffed up. This one came to a head in the Diocese of Northwestern Pennsylvania at convention one year. We were having the convention Eucharist, and we were told, we all get our finery out, we're getting ready to process in, and we were told to line up in canonical order of precedence. Now, I knew what that meant. That means it's a rank thing. The longer you're in place, the more rank you have, and the farther back you are in the liturgical parade. Because the farther back you are in the liturgical parade, the more important you are. Who's the last one in the parade? The bishop. On Sunday, the rector gets to walk at the end. I mean, it's really kind of silly, but we were told to line up. I just thought that was hilarious. So, and I've been ticked off enough by clergy to get a little puffed up. So I want to sing you a song that I sing to myself a lot just to make sure I don't get thinking I'm too big for my britches. I was at this big church service, Several years ago, the priests were lining up because it was time to start the show. And then one self-important cleric stood up to make some announcements. He told us to line up in our canonical order of precedence. What the hell is that? I asked the priest next to me with a frown. Turns out it's some kind of ranking based on when we moved to our town. And it kind of tickled my funny bone, the way the stuff can please us. Our titles and egos and rankings. How does this look to Jesus? Clerical ego, clerical pride. 20 miles long and 20 miles wide. Something ain't right here, let me be frank. What's that I smell? Clerical rank. Now you just think about our titles. Clerical pride does not end. We got venerable, very, right, and even most reverend. How about father, or mother, or rector, or vicar, or such? You can tell who I am by my title, but you sure can't tell me much. You know, I'd rather be called a gargoyle when we're thinking about sacred spaces. They're carved on the walls of cathedrals with rain spouts out their faces. They serve to protect the church. They ought to be part of the staff. It may look like they're spitting down on us, but they're always good for a laugh. Clerical ego, clerical pride. 20 miles long and 20 miles wide. Well, something ain't right here, let me be frank. What's that I smell? Clerical rank. And how about those clothes we wear when we're dressing up to go? You get a bunch of us together, we look like a fashion show. We got embroidered robes aplenty with elegance all over the place. We wear linen and orphreys and lappets and tippets and maniple, surplice and lace. There are priests who act like they think they were present at God's creation. They sign photos of themselves, to myself with frank admiration. It's obvious they think their gifts are wonderful and oh so fine. They write books with titles like this: The 10 Greatest Priests in the World and How I Trained the Other 9. Clerical ego, clerical pride. 20 miles long and 20 miles wide. Well, something ain't right here, let me be frank. What's that I smell? Clerical rank. And I hope you know by now that Mark Twain, I believe he was talking about Methodist ministers, but it translates to any denomination. Mark Twain said this: ministers are like manure. If you put them all in one pile, they stink. You have to spread them out to do any good. So no thanks to clerical ranks. No thanks to clerical ranks. No thanks to clerical ranks. No thanks. And if more priests, religious leaders, bishops, pastors, and theologians down through the centuries had been a little more into laughter and humor, church history might be a little less unpleasant to read and a lot less bloody. So I think, although this is a light and frivolous topic, it's really vital for the health of all Christians and all people of faith everywhere. So, what are you giving up for laughs this year? I hope you won't give up coming back. Next Sunday, Siona will be here, and she's going to talk about some of the classic humor from Jewish religious texts, and it will be fun. So, hope to see you then.
Very good.
One.